In chapter 17 of the Jojolands, we got introduced to a very interesting character, someone who could become the main villain of the Jojolands. Acca Howler. There is a lot to talk about him. Even if he's only appeared in a single chapter so far, there's just so much surrounding the character that is leading many people to believe in this theory of him being the main villain. With this being JoJo and all, the first thing we should look at is his character design. And something that many people have noticed is that Howler has a lot of interesting aspects that you could connect to other characters. The most obvious thing that people have been talking about is Acca Howler's similarities to Gyro Zeppeli. It's mainly due to his funny looking beard being pretty much copy and pasted from what Gyro does. But I personally don't want to put too much of an emphasis on this because, for example, this could just be a stylistic choice. But once again, there's no way of truly telling what Araki is planning. There have been tons of times in the past where Araki has reused character design traits that really have no purpose. Even as recently as Jojolands, Norisuke Higashikata had these balls in his hair that served absolutely no purpose. They were just there for style. They weren't secretly steel balls to use spin or anything. They were just there to be stylish. But especially with Howler having some sort of understanding of spin, it does make sense to make this comparison to Gyro. Remember that the Howler company has a huge focus on land, and from what we've seen from Acca Howler himself, he is a big fan of land and understands its importance. He has a great understanding of nature. This is something that is, especially to the Zeppelis and the use of spin, very important. This is shown from Rai Mamazuku's understanding of spin, despite never being confirmed to be a Zeppeli or not. It shows that just understanding nature is a part of understanding spin. Something else that helps the case for Howler being a Zeppeli is that, as I said in my chapter review, Acca's first name of Acca is the Italian word for H. It fits with Howler's aesthetic of the letter H, but the fact that Araki chose the Italian name is pretty interesting. Araki references Italy and Italian culture a lot, but considering that this is a supposed Italian person who is a fan of the land and by extension the world and its nature, Acca Howler could seriously be a Zeppeli. But just know that there have been a lot of characters in the past that people have thought would end up being Zeppelis. If you want to talk about this kind of stuff with other people, you can join my Discord server. There's a lot of discussions going on there. A big reason on why people think Howler is a main villain is due to his status. Acca Howler is the owner of the Howler company. Now, with how the Jojolands has been shaping up, we've so far been under the impression that Howler would be a gigantic antagonistic force in this part. Remember that the Howler company bought the land that contains the lava rocks, which so far looks like the main source of power in this part. Howler has been hyped up to be the main villain for a couple of chapters now, and it seems that Araki has given us the leader of this company this early. Charming Man's backstory seems really important to me for what we currently know about the part. We knew about his backstory before even our main characters, and his backstory is one that is directly connected to Howler and what they're dealing with. This to me could mean that Howler could be the main force of opposition or be one of the giant forces of evil within this part. Something similar is how Jay Guile was pretty much Polnareff's main villain. Now, Polnareff was here to defeat Jay Guile as much as he was to defeat Dio. Another example is how Hermes went into the Green Dolphin Street prison in order to fight Sports Max, not necessarily Poochie. Howler could just be one of these kinds of people, someone who's mainly the enemy of a single team member of our main group. But this time there are a few reasons towards why he could be something bigger, and once again it's due to the company. The Howler company feels like something akin to the other big companies owned by previous JoJo villains. Pretty much all of them were owners of something massive, whether it be a Rokakaka trade, or the Italian mafia, or the United States of America. They all had a leadership role, except Kira, which was kind of his whole point. So the owner of the Howler company seems to fit well with the other main villains. But obviously, it is hard to tell right now. Something that I wasn't able to mention in my last video is the appearance of Howler's stand. That is right. Despite only appearing for a chapter, we somehow got his stand design already. It was really weird, honestly. There was like no reason for his stand to come out, and it didn't even do anything. But we got his stand, so that's nice. The stand is honestly really interesting as well. And with what Howler was talking about, we could honestly have a bunch of realistic expectations toward what his stand ability could be. When I look at his stand, the first thing that comes to my Jojolian-pilled mind is the wall eyes. The overall rocky look of the stand and the holes surrounding the stand reminds me of the various holes shown in the wall eyes. The long lines of holes are very familiar to what is shown in Howler's stand, and I just see a lot of similarities in my opinion. Maybe it's not referencing the wall eyes specifically, but maybe a different devil's palm that occurred and Howler was somehow able to get the power of. The last thing I mentioned honestly makes a lot of sense if you consider what is said by Howler. In this panel, he mentions that there is a possibility of a change in flow in the system of money. Now, we all know this is due to Jodio and the Jojolands gang, otherwise known as Team Jodio for some reason, having possessions of the lava rock. But what I find important for all of this context is that Howler talking about these issues with money and the flow seem to have summoned the stand, or Howler thinks that this issue is so grand that he chose to show his stand. This truly makes me think that Howler is someone who has a powerful stand, similar to something like Wonder of You, where it can directly change the flow of things, or at least understand the flow in some way. I just really don't see Howler's stand being something completely random when Howler decided to display it to us while at his lowest point financially. Honestly, I could feel the same way as him, especially considering that only 8.4% of my audience is subscribed to my channel, so please subscribe so that whatever happened to Howler doesn't happen to me as well. But honestly, it looks like we already have some sort of idea of what Howler's stand could control. A few times in the part, we learned of these things called lava tubes. Now, personally, it was something that I slowly forgot, but thankfully got reminded of as being the thing that the lava rocks come out of. So these lava tubes are a big, powerful thing in this universe that is causing the lava rocks to spawn. It could be entirely possible for Howlers to have something to do with these lava tubes, maybe being able to control them or even summon them. If that was the case, I could see a less likely chance of Howler being the main villain, since the stand ability just feels a bit too weird to be one. But then again, I could see that type of power being distorted into a lot of different interpretations, one of which could fit into the flow thing going on in this part. But also, the main character's stand in this series is even weirder, so that's important too, I guess. All this talk about Howler's stand, and I didn't even mention what his stand name could be. To understand what I think his stand name could be, we have to figure out Howler's name origin himself. Araki does tend to have a stand name and character associate with each other in some way. For example, just now, Bobby Jean and his stand Glory Days are both references to Bruce Springsteen, so Howler could be the same way. So the song called The Howler is a reference to King Crimson. That's kind of a bombshell, not gonna lie. The owner of the giant evil corporation is also based off of King Crimson. It writes itself. But if we look at the album that King Crimson's song of The Howler is based on, it's the second album of the King Crimson albums from the 80s. The album Beat. As you can see, The Howler is the second to last song in the album, right before Requiem. Requiem? Oh no. Howler being the main villain is kind of working really well right now. I mean, the Howler and then Requiem right after. So Howler Stand could be called one of these songs in the album. So try your best to remember these names while reading Jojolands, because these could be the name of Howler's stand. Like, dude, Howler's stand name is Requiem? That would be absolutely insane. It would be an amazing name for the main villain of the Jojolands. But something else that would be amazing is if Howler's stand referenced another song from a different King Crimson album. Maybe the album right after. For those who aren't too much in the know, the 3 albums that King Crimson made in the 80s are absolutely legendary. Like, that trio is a well-known thing. We had a reference to the first album, Discipline, in Usagi Aloha, as his stand name, the Mate Kudasai, is in the album. We now have a second reference to these 80s albums in The Howler, from obviously the Howler brand and Acca Howler. So it could be that Howler's stand name is from the 3rd album of these 80s King's Crimson's albums. There's a lot of songs on here that could be the case. I personally really like Lark's Tongues in Aspic. That one is really cool, and the song has its own parts to it as well, which could fit the stand evolutions that a lot of JoJo villains tend to have. There is so much we could talk about for Howler stand, and I could mention more. So there's a chance of a part 3 in this Howler series where I go even more in depth on a Howler stand, but you never know. Something that is pretty clear when it comes to what Howler is all about is the distinct parallels to Jodio. And I'm not just talking about something stupid, but there are genuine parallels between the two. It mainly has to do with this one line that comes from one of the bank workers at the end of their conversation with Howler. They call Acca Howler a country bumpkin. This is crazy because it tells us that Howler wasn't always this insane rich man. Maybe he was even poor at one point. A few pages after this, Howler mentioned that a change in the system of money flow happened to him as a child. With this information, it's clear to see what kind of backstory Howler has. He was most likely a poor child or just a poor person who lived on a farm with a quiet life or something like that. But he stumbled upon the lava rock at some point, and then he slowly became rich. A billionaire, in fact. It seems like the story of Acca Howler reflects the kind of adventure Jodio is going to have. As we all know, Jojolands is a story about Jodio becoming rich. Filthy rich, in fact. And Howler is a billionaire, so he could be defined as filthy rich. He also seemingly used a lava rock to become filthy rich, similar to what Jodio is doing right now. All looking to be something that shows a duality between these two characters. Maybe where Howler follows an evil path due to this new flow of money compared to Jodio, who follows a path of good from this new money. There's a lot of stuff even right now that could lead us to sway both ways on if Howler is the main villain. So please tell me what you think in the comments. Personally, I think he has a really high chance of being the main villain. But of course, we will need more information to truly know if this is real. I think his stand is going to be the deciding factor. Depending on how strong it is and its name, we could get a lot of valuable information. But the chance of someone even greater than Howler coming up in this part is still pretty solid. Honestly, I think a lot of it could be if Jojolands is the last part of JoJo. Then the question is mainly if Howler is someone who is fitted to be the final villain of JoJo ever. But is Jojolands even going to be the last part of JoJo? Watch this video to find out.